Citing articles that are found in the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament can be kind of tricky, and so I want to take a moment to show you how to properly cite these kinds of articles. And so you can see on my screen I have a Google Doc open with an imaginary sentence that is citing material from a specific article in the TDNT. Over on the right-hand side of the screen I have two PDFs, one an article of the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, and then I also have up the page from the SBL Handbook of Style that will help us learn how to cite these types of sources. Now, the section that you want to look for in the SBL Handbook of Style is section 6.3.6 and even more specifically 6.3.7, both found on page 94 in the second edition of the SBL Handbook of Style. In 6.3.6, we have general examples of how to cite an article in an encyclopedia or a dictionary, and then in 6.3.7, we get specific examples of citing something from a lexicon or a theological dictionary. The Theological Dictionary of the New Testament is this kind of source, and in fact, if we look down here at the example that's listed as footnote number 6, the article by Herman Bayer actually comes from the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. So that will be very helpful as we try to cite things. So let's just pay attention based on what we find here in the SBL Handbook of Style. What information do we need in order to be able to cite this source? Obviously, we're going to need the author's name. We're going to need the name of the article. And we're going to need the name of the dictionary, italicized and appropriately abbreviated. We're going to need the volume number it's found in, and we're going to need the inclusive page numbers for the article that we're citing. So let's look back over at the PDF that we have of the actual article and see where we're going to find that information. I've included here the title page because the title page is where we're going to find the volume number. Okay, this is in volume 2 of the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. So that'll be important when we cite the page numbers. If I continue to scroll down through the document, all right, the second page that I've included here is the list of contributors. This is typically found in the front matter in the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament for each volume, and this lists all the contributors that offered articles for that particular volume. This will be important because we'll need to refer back to this when we find the author's name. Then if I keep scrolling down, I've got here next the first page of the particular article that I'm working with. This is the article on doulos. In fact, all of these different words that you can see here in this box are covered in this article. This is one of the things that can be tricky about citing things from the TDNT. There's often large sections that cover a variety of different words, and you need to cite the specific section that is addressing the specific word that you are working with. And so we can see there's a list of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different words included in this larger section. I'm going to cite something from the first part, which includes these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So 5 of the 9 words are addressed in one section, and the other words are addressed in different ways. So when I cite the title, I need to give the title of the section that I'm looking at. So in this case, I want to include this list of words as my title rather than trying to include everything that's in that box. If I was going to cite something different, then I would include that. So for example, this large section here that addresses these 5 words goes all the way from 261 until near the end of the article. But if I jump down to page 279, almost right near the end, you can see where it picks up the next 2 words there, right? And then covers one more word here, right? So you can see if I was going to cite something from this section, I would need to include these 2 words as my article title, right? But as I said, I'm going to cite something from that first section, so I'm going to include all 5 of those words in my particular citation, just to show you what that would look like. Then at the very end of the article, right, that goes all the way to 280. So my article, the whole thing runs from 261 to 280. Right, the particular section that I'm going to be working with, right, stops when the author starts addressing some other words. So my section actually ends on page 279 for the inclusive pages. Then in the TDNT, as with other dictionaries, the author's name comes at the very end. So here is the author's name, Rengstorff. Now that obviously is not the author's full name. And so this is where we need that list of contributors. This is just the author's last name. So once I know the author's last name, then I can go back to the front matter, right, look at the list of contributors and search for where I find that particular author. They're going to be listed alphabetically by last name, and so I can scan through until I find Rengstorff here near the end. And so the author's name for the article I'm working with is Karl Heinrich Rengstorff. And so that's all I'll need if I'm going to cite anything. So that gives me the information that I need. Now let me come back over here and let's imagine I had just written this sentence. It is more common for the New Testament, for New Testament compositions to refer to Christians as slaves of Christ than slaves of God. That's information from page 273 in this particular article. So I want to insert my footnote. Let me get my toolbox here. I'm going to insert a footnote, right? Which the short way to do that is Control, Option, Command, and F at the same time. But there's a manual way to enter a footnote. So I'm going to enter my footnote there. And then I'm going to begin typing in my entry. So let's look at the example again over here of what this should look like. If I want it to look like number 6, right? Then I need to have the author's name, article, right? We'll start working from there. So if you remember, my author's name, if I come back over here, is Karl Heinrich Rengstorff. Okay. Now I'm going to need the title of this particular article. So let's jump back over and make sure I'm getting the correct title. So again, as I said, the part that I'm working with comes from this section here with these words, and so that's what I'll need to have over here. And I'm going to switch over to my Greek keyboard so I can type in these particular words. Right now, the font that I'm using isn't ideal for Greek, so I may end up changing this font once I have it all typed into something that looks a little better. Okay, so once I have all of the words in there, just as they appear in the article, then I can be done with my title. And finish that part off. Again, if I'm looking at my example, I have commas after the author's name, comma, and after the article, the title of the article, and then I need the abbreviation for the dictionary. Again, this is the TDNT, Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. Then the next thing I need is the volume number. Remember, we checked the volume number. That's going to be on the title page, all right, volume 2. And then I'm going to need the page number that my particular citation comes from, since this is a footnote. As I told you, the information I'm citing there comes from page 273, period, at the end of my footnote. And so there's a properly formatted footnote to cite something from the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. Now, if I was going to cite something else, right, if I was going to later cite some more information from this same source, and added a second footnote, I don't need all this information again, right? And I can check the SBL Handbook of Style to see what I do need. Right? And so I can see some examples down here. Subsequent entries need to include only the dictionary volume and the page numbers. So I can include the author's name, and I don't need to type out the words again. Instead, I can just put the dictionary title, and I can put my page number. Still going to be from volume 2, and let's imagine it's just a couple pages later. All right, I cite something else from 275, period. All right, so there's a long footnote and a short footnote, properly formatted according to what's in the SBL Handbook of Style. Now, let's imagine that I've finished and I want to include a bibliography entry for this particular source. It's going to be all of the same information, just slightly rearranged. So let me come back down here and copy this so I don't have to retype the whole thing. All right, I'm going to copy it up here, and I'm going to switch it over to this font that looks a little better when it comes to the Greek. There's a slightly different font. Okay, so if I'm going to look at my example over here, what it should look like in a bibliography entry, you notice that in 6.3.7 we don't get any examples of bibliography entries. That's because the editors assume we'll know that the example from 6.3.6 will work for the bibliography entry. So I'm going to copy this example of Krister Stendahl's article in terms of my formatting. So I need the author's last name first, followed by the author's first name. All right, then I'm going to have the title of the article. period at the end. Notice I'm putting periods instead of commas when I'm writing my bibliography entry. And then this all looks the same, abbreviated title, volume number, but now I need the inclusive page numbers for the section that I was working. So it started on 261, and then I only need to include the page numbers for the section of words that I was working with. Right? The article, if you remember, over here goes oops, wrong one. Goes all the way to page 280, but the section that I'm working with actually ends right here on page 279. So the inclusive pages, right, would be to 279. Let's imagine that I was writing an article, or I was citing something that came from this section, the Dula Gogeo section. Then let me copy and paste this, and I'll show you what that would look like just to demonstrate. So we're going to imagine a different bibliography entry. Right? I would this time do 279 to 280, right? Because this one starts on 279, right? It continues to 280 and ends there. And then of course I would need to change the title of the article to match the word that is addressed in that particular section that I'm working on. All right, so that's just to demonstrate how you cite the particular section that you're working with. Again, hopefully that makes sense and helps you see what you should do when you need to cite examples from the TD&T. Can be tricky, but as long as you know what to look for and where to find it, they're actually fairly simple to cite in the end.